YouTubers, it is I, UKRifter, and I'm going to just do a little bit of a race tonight. I haven't done this for a while. I'm going to jump into Assetto Corsa, and you'll notice, look at this model I'm in here. In fact, let me just see if I can just hop out of the car so you can really appreciate the full glory of this. This is a Morris Garages MG-TC. Now, the MG-TC, the T-Series cars, sort of kicked off, I think, pre-war, as far as I remember, with the MG-TA, and then you had the MG-TB. There was a bit of a break in production because of a flipping war breaking out, and then the TC and the TD came after the war and were super popular, particularly with Americans. Mainly because, I'll go into that detail in a minute. Let me just see if I can just get into the car and have a little race around. So, finding cars that were of equivalent power to an MG-TC in this game, pretty difficult. I've picked a Mazda Miata, or a Mazda MX-5, as we call it in the UK. I'm pretty sure that will completely lose me in a few seconds, because these were not quick cars. I think they had a 0 to 60 miles an hour in about 22 seconds. So I've also put in a couple of buses, which I think are going to jump up into the air awkwardly, because I think they've sort of merged together on the grid. So let's see what happens when we hit start. I should be able to take out the buses, but maybe not the MX-5s. Right, let's do this. Whoa, and we're off. The buses there, quite aggressive behaviour from the buses, cutting me up on this corner. But yeah, here we are. So this is a lovely, oh blimey heck, avoid those chaps. AI is going a bit crazy. Right, so I'm in an MG-TC, and as I was saying, these are particularly loved, I think is the fair way to put this, by Americans. And in fact, the TC and the TD were really produced with an American audience in mind. Now, the reason for that is actually quite interesting. It's quite historically interesting, because the MGAs and the MGBs tended to be driven by quite wealthy officers. Oops. Typically in the RAF. And you had people like Douglas Bader, who was an absolute hero at the time. He was an RAF fighter pilot, used to fly Spitfires and Hurricanes. I believe he flew Hurricanes. You have to fact check me on that one. Right, there's no fifth gear, obviously, 4 gears. And these guys were heroes, and they used to drive around, drive up to the old officers' mess in their MGAs. And so the American soldiers that were serving in Britain, basically helping fight the Nazis towards the end of the war, they loved this image of the kind of MG sports car and these officers, and all the ladies seemed to really go for them in their little sports cars. And so the Americans sort of went home and wanted these cars when they got home. They thought, these are cool. We never see anything like these back home. They're very British, So the MG-TD came out, I think, in 1949 and was produced through to 1953. Again, I'm not 100% on that. And it was really produced with the American market in mind. It was kind of a little bit retro even at the time, because there were better cars and more modern designs available, but they went for this kind of retro styling because actually it was so much more in demand by people really nostalgically looking back at pre-war and during the war, in fact. So not just popular with Americans for that nostalgic reason, it was popular with Brits as well. And so yeah, that's why the TC and particularly the TD got produced. So what I'm driving here is a TC. So TC differs from the TD in a few different ways, but generally speaking, next to each other, they're very, very similar cars. So the style did not change much, even from the MGA, MGB, MGZ, D, all the way through to the F. They missed out E for some reason. I don't know what happened to E. E was obviously an idea that went completely wrong, and they sort of threw that out. But then you ended up with the F. The F was different still in that the headlamps merged into the bonnet in a kind of cool way. So it was a sort of trying to keep this classic style, but at the same time add a little bit of a modern twist, and that was the final of the MGT series, also known as the Midget series, which is a word which isn't particularly used nowadays. But there you go, that's pretty much my knowledge of MGs. But look at this, beautiful walnut dash, and over here we've got, you've got the starter motor there, you've got, which also doubles, I think, as the light switch as well. That's right, that switch there's the light switch. This little one here is the horn, and you've got your rev counter in the middle there, which is very important on these cars because they don't have particularly good synchromesh gear systems. So effectively, you had to be very aware of the revs you were doing to change gear, particularly from first to second, because there's no synchromesh at all between first and second. So you have to hit it bang on the money on the right revs. Otherwise, you're going to crunch your gearbox and make a terrible, terrible noise. But there you go. So, you know, I would say this handles well or handles badly. It's actually quite hard to comment on how well or badly this handles because you never really get up enough speed to put it through its paces. But I'll tell you what, I've got a beautiful view. I feel quite classy driving along in this classy automobile. And look at this beautiful Scottish countryside as well. I forgot how absolutely wonderful Assetto Corsa is, and driving along in this classic car, talking about the wonderful Morris Garages company. Ah, well, you know, seemed like a nice way to break back into Assetto Corsa. Now, I do have the MGTD model as well, so I'll tell you what, let's have a little look at that. Here's the big MG steering wheel, and we have the rev counter in the middle there, directly in front of you, which is very useful, probably more useful than the speedometer there. We've got various knobs and dials there, which I'm sort of still learning about, to be absolutely honest with you. On my MG keyring, I of course have my Nissan Figaro keyring. Anyway, let's have a little look around the cabin area here. We've got lovely red leather, and there you go, the view over the bonnet of the chrome headlights there, looking very flash. Let's get out and have a little look around the car. So classic MG design. You've got the MG badge on the front there. The radiator needs a little bit of work, needs a bit of paint. Nothing too serious. It doesn't have wire wheels. They didn't come with wire wheels. It was an optional extra. This wasn't a re-import from the US. This actually was built for domestic market, as it were. And yeah, absolutely beautiful car, and I look forward to driving it more. Let's take a drive now. Of course, the MG doors, which I always forget, I always reach for the wrong side, are what they call suicide doors, so they open from the back. So we're going to head off. So first thing is to do, turn the ignition on, wait for the fuel pump to stop. We don't need the choke, I've just been driving it, so it should be fine. Make sure I'm not in gear. Starts first time. I'd usually have to pull the choke out, but not at the moment. So I'll have to shout so you can hear me above the noise. Now, I have very big feet, so driving this is a bit of a problem. Just going to try reverse gear. We're good. Alright, so. Right, we are ready to go. Quick look over the shoulder. Lifesaver manoeuvre. No seatbelts in this car. Amp meter going crazy. I don't know why. Anyway. You shouldn't leave it idling too long. You have to drive away pretty much straight away in these cars. Otherwise, it starts leaking oil. Also, first gear, get out of first gear as soon as possible because you start to get a bit of kangarooing. First gear really is for sort of 0 to 2 miles an hour. brakes on this aren't so good, so you've got to allow for a fair amount of stopping distance. Hope nobody jumps in front of you and slams their brake on. Because you wouldn't have a chance. Still indicating. Don't know how long I've been indicating for. Right. And off we go. So we're just leaving a place called Newlands Corner, heading down towards Guildford area. Cyclists wouldn't usually be a challenge in any other car, but in this car, bit of a challenge. Want to get around him safely on a corner. Obviously I've got half a dozen people up my rear end there waiting for me to overtake, but mustn't feel pressured into doing silly manoeuvres. This isn't a powerful car, 50 brake horsepower or thereabouts. As close to emergency stop as I've done so far. It doesn't really do emergency stops. Tell you what, mate, you wouldn't pull out on me if you knew how bad my brakes were. Stop to traffic lights. Into first gear. Don't like changing into first gear because it's not particularly useful. Hill climb. So I'm going to indicate with the indicator switch, and I'm going to go up this road here. And there we are. A nice little drive in an MG2D. Hello me.